can you cheat in a game before it releases? So picture this, you crack a game and you're able to play it for 6 months before it actually releases to everybody. That head start might not mean a lot to me, or maybe to you, but to a pro player who's trying to win tournaments, it could be significant, at least for some period of time until people catch up. So, is this cheating? After 6 months of doing nothing, Capcom has finally said, yeah, it is. We're back talking about cheating, one of my favorite topics. So if you enjoy the topic and you're not already subscribed, why not consider it? Especially if you like the video. If you don't like the video, no pressure, okay? No pressure. So back in October 2022, there was a closed beta test that only had 8 characters in it, and mostly the people invited were like streamers, pros, personalities, people like that. So the reception to the game actually seemed pretty good, especially the netcode, which had players really far apart playing some high quality matches. Love to see it. However, it was played through Steam, and after a certain point, the beta period was supposed to end, and it was supposed to be impossible to launch this application and play this Street Fighter 6 beta. Well, it ended up getting cracked, and that meant that anyone with the cracked executable could still play this version of the beta even after the beta period had expired. So it seems like the early versions of this executable actually just bypassed Steam, but that was a little uncomfortable for some people because you still showed up as playing Street Fighter 6. And presumably Steam could see that too. And it seems like eventually there were versions of the crack that completely bypassed Steam. That Steam didn't have to be tricked because basically the application was just like running on your computer. So before we move on to Capcom's words and potential future actions on this particular issue, I think we should address an obvious objection here, which is, so what? So what if some people played the beta for 6 months ahead of time? Who cares? Who is that hurting? Okay, let's talk about that. And while I don't agree with this objection, I think that it's common enough that we should talk about it. Well, first off, we should just say there is a lot of money on the line for Street Fighter 6 this year. There's going to be a total of $2 million with a $1 million grand prize offered by Capcom. So if this affected that in really any way, that's not good. And listen, I think having that much time with the video game does represent an advantage. We can argue about what kind of advantage exactly it represents, or about how long it might feasibly last. Sure, I mean, it's hard to know those things, but I still think it does represent an advantage. So like, unless they cancel Street Fighter 6 completely and rebuild it from nothing, the people who played this cracked version were playing some version of the game that we're going to see in June. Others have argued that this opened the closed beta and somehow democratized it. While I'm sympathetic to the spirit of the argument, I mean, Capcom never said this was okay. Again, it wasn't Capcom's intention to allow this, and let's not forget, people actually took measures to make the game playable when it shouldn't have been. This isn't some freak accident or fluke. They did this intentionally, so here we are. The last time I thought Capcom might actually do something about this, or even just address it, I was trying not to eat my kids' Halloween candy, and that's not an exaggeration. Fast forward 6 months and we have the statement from Capcom that claims, quote, "This is a violation of the CVT terms of service and can be seen as a violation of the Capcom Pro Tour Code of Conduct." Also, that candy is... it's gone. It's totally gone. And sure, this is great information, and I'm happy that Capcom did address this, but it would have been a lot better to talk about it 6 months ago. Either Capcom never heard about this issue at any point before now, which is so implausible that I just don't think it's reasonable to assume that, or they just waited for some reason. I don't get it. I honestly don't. But I think they succeeded at that somehow, and then they just brought it back. Capcom continued, quote, "For the clear avoidance of doubt from this point forward, any player who is shown with clear evidence to be accessing the CBT in an unauthorized way may be deemed ineligible for the upcoming Capcom Pro Tour and Street Fighter League seasons." But this all seems like too little too late to me. I mean, people have been playing it for 6 months. Now they're gonna say, everybody stop and promise you won't do it again. And if your judgment is so poor that you do, and we can prove it, then we might ban you. Japanese fighting game Promomochi apparently voiced his frustration with the situation before Capcom issued their ruling. So will anyone actually face consequences for this? My guess is no. If your judgment is so poor that you decide to continue to access the CBT and to give people evidence of that fact, well, I really doubt anyone's going to stick up for you now. And even though this statement seems to suggest that this will only be enforced going forward, I have to imagine a lot of YouTube videos got set to private over the last week. Now, lest you think I'm here to defend Capcom in some way, I'm not. They really messed up here by not addressing it sooner. And so in some ways, this problem is of their own making. Listen, even if Capcom couldn't revoke access from these cracked betas because they were no longer working through Steam or whatever, even just saying, don't do this, it is considered a violation, and if we catch you, you will be punished, would have deterred some people from getting involved in this thing in the first place. Or maybe you just give the beta to everyone. A radical solution maybe, but one that would have made the community a lot happier. Honestly, this really worries me. As somebody who played Street Fighter 2 basically religiously, I want to live to see a Street Fighter 7 and a Street Fighter 8, but this is not the way to get there. Street Fighter 6 has a massive potential for not just the series, but for fighting games as a whole, and we know this because it's happened before. Street Fighter 4's 2009 launch revitalized what seemed like a doomed genre, and brought in a new generation of players to bring fighting games into the decades to come. And then Street Fighter V's rough launch hampered it for a while, and even though the game has gotten to a really good place and one that many people consider to be a very good competitive fighting game, it wasn't good for a while. And Tekken took advantage of that to earn some much needed territory and spotlight in the FGC. Things are more complicated than ever for Capcom. They're balancing a lot of stuff, and I'm not going to say that they aren't, because, leverless controllers like the hitbox have become issues. The net play problem and the need for extremely high quality net play is also a concern, and now you've got stuff like this, where applications are being cracked, betas are being extended for indefinite periods of time, and Capcom just has to deal with that. But if they want to give their game the best chance to succeed, I think they have to be more proactive about things like this. Make sure you're getting enough light. I'm not getting enough light. And on days where I have to film in the morning and I have like softboxes on in here and I just accidentally leave them on, I feel like a god. I feel like a deity. Like I have so much energy. But if I sit in this dark basement without that, it's horrible.